Hello and welcome to the Circuito de Jerez in the southwest of Spain for round 6 of the 2018 FIM CEV Repsol. We're now just 3 events away from the end of our latest campaign, but not one of our 3 championships is yet decided. One of them theoretically could be this weekend. However, more likely is that we'll be looking at a showdown for all 3 series in Albacete next month and Valencia in November, and that the programme of 5 races here will set up those late season battles. Over the course of the next 4 hours or so, we'll bring you all of the action from the FIM Moto3 Junior World Championship, the Moto2 European Championship and the European Talent Cup. The Moto2 riders will have just a single race during the event, while the other 2 categories will be taking part in double headers. I'm Alex Raby, back for a second round in 3, and alongside me is our regular FIM CEV Repsol analyst, Fran Wild. Fran, before we take viewers through a lap of this circuit, an overview of this race programme, mathematically, the options are open for the vast majority of riders in pretty much all of the categories, even though we're now 2/3 of the way through this season.
Yeah, definitely. Hello, good morning, firstly. I think it can be a little bit deceptive for the CEV because we have quite often 2 races for each category on a Sunday. You can look easily at the amount of dates left and think, okay, well, there's only 50 points left, but not so. Today we have 50 points on the table just today for Moto3. So yeah, it's hotting up pretty much though at the sharp end of the championship, and Raul Fernandez in Moto3 has a pretty sizable advantage, but this is Jerez with that final corner, and anything can easily happen, even just in the first race of the day, to serious dent in that.
Before we get into the detail of Moto3 specifically, an overview of this Jerez circuit. It's considered one of the sort of classic venues in the motorcycle world, inaugurated over 30 years ago, but newly renamed earlier this year after Ángel Nieto, 90 times Grand Prix winner who passed away in August last year. The track itself, 2 main overtaking hotspots into turn 1 and into turn 6 at the end of the track's longest straight. We could see a couple of last bend lunges on the last couple of turns as well. A regular venue for testing because for more than 2/3 of the year this track is bathed in sunshine, and this weekend is going to be no exception. Hot temperatures once again.
Yeah, definitely. It seems hard to believe, I think, when you head outside down here in Andalusia that it's October tomorrow. So I think that's definitely something to consider for these guys. Obviously, in the height of summer, it can get a lot hotter here, and the vast majority of most of the field here do have experience of that as well. But it is one of the warmer venues on the CEV calendar, and certainly a far cry from the kind of windy start to the year we had in Estoril. So yeah, it definitely feels like summer down here today.
The first race of 5 then here in Jerez is the FIM Moto3 Junior World Championship. The class made up of 250cc single-cylinder 4-stroke machines, the 8th and 9th of 12 2018 races this weekend, and just a chance that current series leader Raul Fernandez could even sew up the series. 28 points is his advantage after victory last time out in Aragon, but if he were to win with his main rivals failing to score, he could of course theoretically open his gap to more than the 75 points available in the 3 remaining races. A quartet of different winners so far in 2018, and they comprise 4 of the top 5 in the standings. 3 of them, Fernandez, Pagliani and Alcoba, have won 2 races each, but Fernandez is the only rider in the series to have finished every race in a scoring position, and it's his consistency that makes him the man to beat in the second half of this campaign.
Yeah, definitely. Fernandez, when you look at his, it's only in Catalonia really where he's been out of that fight right at the front for the top few positions, and even then, you know, took home 8 points, so not a bad day of it. But Fernandez definitely showing that consistency is what can win you titles, assuming, of course, that that continues from here on out. But Pagliani, definitely, he was kind of the early season king, and he'll be hoping to now get back on terms with that. Like you said, the gap's not so big. Everything can change a lot when you've got 50 points on the table and 2 different races on one single day as well. Obviously, if you do have a crash in the first race, you can't take part in the second. That can also have some consequences for your place in the standings. But I think overall, it's definitely not over by any stretch, but Fernandez will be feeling a lot more relaxed, I think, than a few of the guys trying to chase him down.
And something that you've said before, Fran, championship points, the closer we get towards the end of the season, obviously, the more relevant an advantage becomes. That said, still plenty of points up for grabs, and when, well, not just in Moto3, but in all 3 categories, there's several riders in the mix. Things can change around very quickly with a late season turn of form.
Yeah, definitely. It's something we did see in this championship with the year Aaron Canet and Nicolo Buligo were fighting it out. Canet seemed like he'd definitely have that sewn up, and then some drama, and I think it was an ankle injury or an arm, not quite sure on that. But everything went down to the finale in Valencia, and it didn't go Canet's way, and Buliga took the crown. And there was a few guys arrived with a chance at the crown. Joan Mir was also one of them. And yeah, it's very, very easy to sort of relax and lull yourself into a false sense of security. But at the end of the day, 2 races on one day, everything can change.
So we'll take you on a run through the grid then, starting from pole position. Pole sitter Sergio Garcia, who had his worst weekend of the season here in 2017, so he'll be keen to put that behind him swiftly. 2 race victories already this season to add to his maiden win recorded last year. 3 scoreless races in the first 4 have left him, though, with work to do in the series overall. This is his first pole position in his CEV career.
Yeah, Garcia was really, really impressive when he came back from injury and won basically straight out again. So really, really good performance from him. He's a really small rider as well. I think it's one of the youngest as well. So it's really, really impressive stuff from him to have done what he's managed to do so far. And yeah, like you said, early in the season, it was a bit of a win or bin for him, but he does seem to have kept that a little bit calmer in the last couple of rounds and at least taken some good points.
Second on the grid, you saw there, Ai Ogura. 2018 has been a season of consolidation, really, for the Japanese rider after finishing 8th in his 2017 debut campaign. Winner here in race 2 last season. He hasn't been able to add to his win tally since then, although he has recorded 2 podium finishes and was 4th last time out in Aragon. Completing the front row, Manuel Pagliani, former Italian Moto3 champion, only moved to the CEV full-time this season. And having made a couple of wildcard appearances both in 2013 and 2016, very unfortunate to be brought down on the opening lap in Aragon. Now has a massive 28 points to make up in the championship, but he's on the front row, his 3rd appearance on the front row this season, and he will be optimistic of scoring a decent points haul from there. That completes our front row then, Garcia, Ogura and Pagliani. Yeah,
definitely. I think the guys like Pagliani who know they have that gap to make up, they're probably going to be looking at that final corner a little bit differently to Fernandez, who's obviously a bit more on the defence. So it could be interesting how that's going to play into it as well. So should be a good day, I think.
So before we carry on with our process through the grid, we've already introduced you to the top 3. We'll try and run you down the rest of the top 10. We're just going to take a look at the direction that this circuit takes. And as I said, it's a well-known track, well-known to the riders who have plenty of experience of it for testing as well. Down into turn number 1 and also into turn 6 are the main overtaking opportunities. And we're just going to give you an indication as to the direction of the traffic itself as we see an outlap from Yuki Kuni.
Yeah, so obviously junior talent team rider, pretty good form this season. You know, he's been the lead rider from that team in the standings most of the year, and then Ogura's catching him up now. But it's always good to get a taste of the track. I think it's you get a very different impression of these venues when you're a fan sat in a stand or watching on TV compared to how it looks on a bike.
Heading in towards what I was talking about, the, well, back straight effectively as we come around turn number 5 down one of the main overtaking opportunities, elevation change, and then into one of the heavier braking zones, turn number 6. And I think we'll see plenty of slipstreaming in the Moto3 class in particular.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the Moto3 bikes, that's the name of the game for them, Slipstream City. It's much easier for those guys to use that to their advantage. And obviously, a lot of guys try and do that in qualifying as well, but in a race, it can make all the difference and get you close enough to make that move.
Obviously, this is an outlap, so it gives you a bit more of an opportunity to sort of take in the surroundings. And clearly, Kuni will be pushing a lot harder down that straight come race time itself. And he's the man who actually leads off the second row of the grid here today, so I'm sure we'll catch up with him in a couple of moments' time. Still looking for his first race victory in CEV, having joined the championship last season. And Yuki Kuni does have a win under his belt from the Red Bull rookies. Actually won this year's Mugello round on his way to 9th in the series overall. But as you said, Yuki Kuni, one of perhaps a little bit inconsistent, but be looking for a good race here today from 4th on the grid.
Yeah, definitely. He's had a few injury struggles this season as well. Like you said, in the rookies early on, he was quite a challenger for Canon Chu, who eventually has taken that crown now, or did in Aragon anyway. And yeah, he's had some seriously good speed in the rookies, although then forced to sit on the sidelines a bit too much to really make a dent in that top 10. But You know, it's good for him to be back again now and on form, and like you say, on that second row, which is no mean feat in this championship. It's a very competitive field.
As you said, strong start to 2018 for him. He ran as high as 4th in this championship after Le Mans, but has since picked up just 12 points from 3 races. His previous best grid position of the campaign was 5th, so this is a new best grid position for 2018. Yuki Kuni, who starts from P4.
As you can see, it is pretty sunny down there. We've got the umbrellas out, but definitely not for the rain. So I'm very, very happy that here is one of the places where we have very good aircon in the commentary box. And as you can see there as well, not too much breeze, so it's a pretty warm day in Jerez. So I think that will be interesting as well. Obviously, these guys attacking race distance for the first time, and they'll get a lot of information from the first race to use in the second, but obviously it will be a different time of day as well, so that will affect it. The second time they head out later this afternoon.
Continuing on through row 2, Yuki Kuni, Carlos Tate and Aleix Vieux. Tate, podium finisher here last season in the European Talent Cup, moved over to Moto3 at the Barcelona round, and clearly still getting to grips with this category of racing, but a great job he did in qualifying to get up to P5, and sitting alongside him will be Aleix Vieux, hoping for better fortune than he had here last season. He retired on the grid, massively inconsistent so far in 2018 View, with pole position and victory in Le Mans the highlight, still learning his craft, having graduated as runner-up from Red Bull rookies last season.
Yeah, definitely. As you said as well, this second row is incredibly tight, and even Chantra at the head of the third row, really, really close to those guys. There's 4 riders within half a tenth there, so very, very competitive, and every tiny little thing made a big difference for those guys and where they're lining up to qualify. So here we have the aforementioned Chantra, former Asia Talent Cup champion from Thailand, and he's really kicked on this season in the CV and had some solid results and got some good momentum behind him. And he is also, quite excitingly, going to be wildcarding in the Moto3 World Championship next time out at Buriram when we go there for the first time. So that's some serious home pressure for him. But I think also, obviously, having been in the Asian Talent Cup, he's also got experience of that track, so it should be less pressure than maybe somewhere else to make his World Championship debut.
And P8 on the grid, Raul Fernandez, who made his 3rd World Championship appearance of the season last weekend in Aragon, the venue that saw him claim his 3rd career victory last time out in the CEV, of course, in the last weekend of July. Fernandez, one of the riders in focus, the championship leader at the moment, 4 2018 podiums, including 2 wins. Really dramatic contrast to his somewhat disastrous 2017 campaign. And we complete the 3rd row in a little bit of a rush as the riders are about to make their way away. Jeremy Alcoba then completes that 3rd row. So we'll look at the grid in full then, and a strong day yesterday for the Asia Talent team with 2 of the top 4 on the grid, Ayagura and Yuki Kuni, both with their best qualifying performances of the campaign. 2 of the top 3 in the championship, surprisingly restricted to 8th and 9th position. Series leader Raul Fernandez and current number 3 Jeremy Alcoba coming through then from the 3rd row. Canon Chu, podium finisher in Aragon, leads row 4 from 10th with brother Denizon Chu 2 places behind. Just a second separated the top 15 in qualifying, and as Fran said, just over 3/10 of a second separated position 7 to 13. So another close lead group in prospect. Surprising to see Marc Garcia 9th in the championship coming into this round, down in 19th position on the grid. The reigning World Supersport 300 champion certainly hasn't had things his own way since moving full-time to the CEV for 2018. 10th place in the current championship standings, Celestino Vietti Ramos misses out this weekend through injury. His place at the Sky Junior Team VR46 Riders Academy is taken by Elia Bartolini. A total of 39 entrants of 15 different nationalities lining up on a packed and diverse grid. All runners separated by just over 3 seconds yesterday. A competitive race then in prospect.
Yeah, definitely. That was saying some of those gaps on the grid at least are absolutely tiny. So if those guys have similar race pace now, it's going to be quite a fight out there, I think, in this first race in Jerez. Have to see who can learn what from that first outing for this afternoon, but certainly first time out, I think it's going to be a cracker.
No surprises for the riders as they make their way around on the warm-up lap. Of course, they have had the warm-up session this morning to sample the track, but as we go gradually through the day, temperatures will be rising, track temperature will be rising the more that the bikes are out on track as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously more and more rubber getting laid down as well as we continue racing. And for these guys, it's not too big a gap between warm-up and their first race of the day, but it still does change a fair bit, you know, like when you're having breakfast at the hotel and it seems like a lovely cool day, and you get to the track and suddenly just everything feels a little bit damp because it's already too hot for British people. But still, I think we should be having a good race, I think, now, without that too much playing into it. It should be a fairly standard Moto3 battle, but I think in the hot temperature of the afternoon, it's going to get a bit more critical for these guys.
The sheer volume of riders on the grid, and you can feel a physical rumble from our commentary position as the bikes come past us, which is quite impressive as well.
Yeah, definitely. When they all set off then on the warm-up lap, and then when they get back round as well, it's a bit of a Moto3 earthquake for us, but all in the best way. So yeah, pretty exciting to get racing now here and see what this guy can do from pole. Usually from pole, it's gone pretty well for him historically, so we'll have to see if he can repeat that now.
13 rows to this grid, so we do have some riders working their way through from towards the back that we'll be keeping our eye on, particularly Marc Garcia, as I already mentioned, trying to fight his way through. We'll see how he gets on coming through from there, but early on the focus will be on the front row of the grid, clearly, and that pole sitter, Sergio Garcia. Great start from the number 35, a couple of rows back. Somkiat Chantra's made a really good one, but it is Sergio Garcia who's going to make the break into the first turn, and Chantra moving through to 4th position, so from 7th up to 4th, a blinding start from Chantra.
Yeah, that's great. You can see those junior talent team riders off the line super quick and all slotting in behind Garcia there. But for Garcia, absolute dream start. Exactly what he wanted. Clear air in front of him, see if he can unleash that pace and make a bit of a break for it.
So Garcia having made a slight break early on, it has to be said. Already a couple of tenths of a second clear of Ayagura, with Yuki Kuni in 3rd position and, well, really close, 2nd down to 4th place as things stand.
Yeah, as well, Garcia knows that he can win like this. He knows that he can extend that gap and then bring it home, and he's done that already this season. So that's good for him. I think the guys behind just need to not panic too much and push too hard and make a mistake.
Chantra diving down the inside of Yuki Kuni to claim 3rd position. So Chantra's forward march on the opening lap continues. This has been an extremely impressive start from a rider who's clearly determined. We did say that group very tightly packed in qualifying as Kuni thinks about a move back down the inside. And for the moment, at least, holding on is Somkiat Chantra. 2 riders down towards the lower end of the field. The number 18 and the Dutchman, Ryan van der Lagma. And he's trying to remount now, but that's going to be his race more or less run.
Yeah, it's always disappointing when you have a fall on the first lap. Obviously, a bit of heartbreak for those guys. We could just see that out of shot the first time we went round there. It didn't really... Oh, getting pretty close there. It didn't really show us exactly what might have happened, but both up and okay at least, which is the main thing. Top
2 starting to try and break away, while Somkiat Chantra and Yuki Kuni go at it over 3rd position. And Ayagura's ducking out now of the slipstream down the inside of Sergio Garcia into turn 1. Garcia holds on for the moment, and further back, Chantra has still managed to hold on ahead of Yuki Kuni. But as I said, the field's starting to splinter ever so slightly, and a gap of 7 tenths now emerging. Oh, and which of our leaders is that who's gone down? On the first couple of turns there. We'll pick that up as soon as possible. They're right on the fringes of that group, as you can see now. They will rejoin the race, but at the back of the field, and that's Chantra. Is that Somkiat Chantra who's gone down in the middle of that group? I think it is. And after saying that he was pushing on the opening lap, I wonder whether he's just pushed it a little bit too hard on lap number 2. The number 35 right to the back now of that group. And after challenging so strongly in the top 3 positions early on, Somkiat Chantra will be absolutely devastated about that.
Yeah, absolute heartbreak for the Thai rider there, and on his last day before he makes his World Championship debut as well. But hopefully he's got back in it pretty quick, so we'll have to see if he can manage to tag on to the back of the field and make any progress throughout this race. Obviously 15 laps to go. He's got a while to get that rhythm back and see what he can do.
The top 2 really have made a break now. Sergio Garcia and Ayagura, with all of the chaos in that battle for 3rd position behind. Yuki Kuni still in there, but I think he's fallen to the back of that group now, so a real second pack developing. The top 2 trying to break away. Ayagura's going with Sergio Garcia, but we've got a 4-way scrap for 3rd position down, with Raul Fernandez having made some good progress. And you can see Ayagura is sort of eyeing up dive bomb moves down the inside line, but for the moment just holding himself, reining himself in. He's right right on the tail here of Sergio Garcia as they blast down the start-finish straight once again, and it could be an opportunity here into turn number 1. They go side by side. Ayagura has the inside line and doesn't quite have the race lead. Sergio Garcia managing to get back across the front of him. He's later on the brakes, isn't he, Garcia? Because it appears that Ayagura has the straight line speed.
Yeah, definitely. I think it looks like Agura, if he really wanted to be aggressive, for example, if this was the final lap, looks like he has got the ability to go past him. But at the moment, no real need to. They're obviously setting good lap times, escaping from the pack. That's the main thing. If it's a duel for these guys, then they know they're going to be first or second. But Agura feinting those moves, but not quite committing to them as yet. We'll have to see if at the final corner it comes down to a game of I'm Marc Marquez and you're Jorge Lorenzo.
Good effort from Raul Fernandez as well, up from 8th position on the grid and into 3rd. Can he now bridge the gap to this top 2 as Agura thinks about a move once again down the inside? But just as you've said, for the moment at least, it's keep your cards close to your chest, claim that 2nd position, try and break from the rest of the group, because Raul Fernandez is 1.5 seconds further down, trying to split from Manuel Pagliani, of course, the 2 championship rivals in 3rd and 4th positions, while these 2 dice it out up front in a separate duel.
Yeah, I really thought Agura was immediately going to prove me wrong there, but not quite. Looking very, very racy there. But like you said, Raul Fernandez made it to the front of that group, and Yuki Kuni's in there, Jeremy Alcoba, Dennis Onchu, who seems to have made a better start than his twin brother Chan. We did see one of the Red Bull KTM bikes headed a little bit wide and squiggly on that first lap, so that must have been Chan, now the reigning Red Bull Rookies Cup champion. So, yeah, that group, though, is pretty feisty in second. They'll have to make sure they can kind of choose one of them to set that pace and see if they can close down on the leaders. Otherwise, they're going to lose touch even more.
Pagliani cutting down the inside of Raul Fernandez into the final turn to take 3rd position. It's still Garcia versus Agura up front. Pagliani having coming through. Fernandez might try and repay the compliment here down into turn number 1, but not for the moment at least. Sergio Garcia it is who leads it by less than 1/10 of a second ahead of Ayagura in 2nd. And I wonder whether the group behind are slightly holding one another up, and they've swapped positions over the last lap or so, whereas Ayagura is just playing the pack in 2nd position game for the moment at least, and those 2 are continuing to break. You mentioned Dennis Onchu as well, up from 12th on the grid. Great effort from him to get into 7th position, but this 4-way fight now is starting to break clear of him. He's over a second back now from 6th position, Jeremy Alcoba.
Yeah, so those guys obviously, like you said, managed to break away from that latter half of the top 10, but they are going to need to pay attention to the guys ahead of them in that gap and make sure they don't hold each other up, because that will very, very quickly mean they've got no chance of hunting them down again. But, you know, I think Fernandez, Pagliani maybe should be able to think that through. They're very experienced guys, and obviously they know they're both very quick guys as well. Hopefully we'll see a bit less fighting it out at the moment. Not better for fans, of course, because it can be spectacular, but for the end of the race, at least have a big scrap would be great.
That said, in normal conditions, these guys would be thinking about bridging the gap to the top 2, but they'll also be thinking about knocking spots off one another in the context of the championship as they sit 1 and 2 at the moment. And it is the current championship leader, Raul Fernandez, that's got back in front of Manuel Pagliani, who's relegated down to 4th position. The rider who looks racy at this stage of this duel is Yuki Kuni, who's coming on strong here, actually, as they come through the final sequence of turns. Kuni thinks about a move down the inside. Pagliani was doing the same on Fernandez at the same time. And we'll see if now down the blast down this start-finish straight there may be further position changes. It's Sergio Garcia for the moment at least. Completely opposite side of the track to Ayagura. Doesn't want to give away any slipstream. Agura tucking in 2nd place. Raul Fernandez, it is still 3rd. Manuel Pagliani in 4th position. And actually, just as I say that, Pagliani is overhauled. Yuki Kuni, who I said was attempting to make progress in the last sector there, has now come through for 4th position, relegating Pagliani down to 5th position ahead of Jeremy Alcoba in 6th.
Yeah, like you were saying, maybe these guys have got more of an eye on the championship, you know, if they're okay with essentially not letting this race go, but, you know, if it's a fight between Garcia and Agura, they don't lose out too much in the standings. But I very much doubt at this stage of the season that's how they're thinking about it. Like we said, there's a lot of points left to run this season, and race wins really can make a big difference.
Mention of that separate group further back then, Dennis Onchu still leading Bruno Iarachi, who was one of the hot pace setters in this morning's warm-up. So Iarachi doing a good job early on in this race. as we return our focus to the top 6 then, and Pagliani, who is swapping and changing at the moment with Yuki Kuni back in front of the number 33, who's looking down the inside line. Pagliani not quite sure at the moment whether he's pushing on and challenging Fernandez or whether he's getting eaten alive by Yuki Kuni behind. Kuni again thinking about a move, but not this time around.
I can imagine there's some interesting Italian being said in that helmet at the moment, but yeah, definitely. Obviously Kuni as well, he's completely racing for himself. Obviously wants to finish as far up in the championship as he can this season, but he's not really in that title fight at all, so he's got nothing to lose and he can just race his own race and not really pay any heed to the situation of Fernandez or Pagliani. And kind of likewise Alcoba, he's not that much further behind, but I think also he'll be aware that it would take a bit of a miracle for him to really challenge, so, you know, just race the race.
Alcoba had that non-scoring finish, of course, in Estoril that's left him with a lot of ground to make up. He has been on the podium in each of the last 3 rounds as Pagliani ducks down to the inside line once again into turn number 1 in the battle for 3rd position. He is holding on ahead of Yuki Kuni, but for the moment making no impression on Raul Fernandez, the championship leader, who'll be grateful for another appearance on the podium to further extend his championship leads.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly the same gap that we had a few laps ago. So they're not at least costing each other time with some of these moves, but they're certainly not having gained any at all. So it would be interesting, I think. And it's interesting as well, Agura obviously genuinely completely happy to just sit there in second, put that pressure on and bide his time, because Garcia doesn't seem to be able to break away from the Japanese rider at all.
Agura seemed to be building up a move there because he ran wider around the outside of turn 5 and got into the slipstream, but again, just not able to make it into turn number 6. Either that or happy and content to just tuck in behind for the moment. Manuel Pagliani has now made it to the front of that group behind, so somehow Raul Fernandez dropping 2 positions down that straight because it's Yuki Kuni up ahead of him as well. So Kuni up into 4th position, Pagliani now into 3rd, but these 3 staying together as we see Garcia running wide, moving back across the track to claim track position and stay ahead of Agura.
Yeah, definitely. You can see that was pretty wide from the Spaniard there, and it just went out of shot. It looked like maybe Agura was going to dive up the inside, but not quite, still held off there. I think that's another little bit of proof that we have that Agura is definitely sitting there because he wants to, because there was a perfect opportunity to just yeah, just slice back into that. Oh, and here we go. So making a move now, final corner for Agura. Maybe he thinks, okay, I've seen your pace, I've seen what you can do, and I think I can go quicker.
Agura then comes through for the race lead ahead of Sergio Garcia around the final turn of the lap. Still a long way to go, of course, in this Moto3 action, the first racing of the day here in Jerez, and we've still got that duel further back. 4 riders all separated by just 0.2 of a second, and Jeremy Alcoba just slipping off the back of them ever so slightly on that last lap, but still well clear of a separate fight from 7th position down as Agura attempts to bolt now ahead of Sergio Garcia in 2nd.
Yeah, definitely. Agura looks like he's putting the hammer down a little bit here, and you can see before in the junior talent team garage there, Alberto Puch looking on, watching the man who won one of the races here last year, and now leading the race for the first time. But Garcia does seem to have been able to stay with him, but again, there's nothing too crazy. He's not immediately tried to hit back or kind of made sure that they get in each other's way and that lead comes down. So sensible riding from both if they want this to be a duel to the finish. But that gap now back to that second group has come down a little bit.
Yeah, just a fraction. Manuel Pagliani attempting to reel in the lead group, and Raul Fernandez will be keen to try and get back to the front of that little squabble as quickly as possible, knowing that Pagliani is his main championship rival, and if he stretches his legs and bridges the gap to the top 2, that could mean problems for Raul Fernandez. As we take a look at that dice further back down the order, Dennis Onchu will be grateful for being a little bit clear of Aleix Vieux and Bruno Iarachi and a whole group of riders in and around the fringes of the top 10. We've got 6 riders in a pack together further back.
Yeah, definitely. It's all getting a little bit close back there. It's a good little fight there. And it's good to see Dennis Onchu. I think in this championship been a little bit, you know, I think him and his twin brother Chan Onchu, they've both had a bit of a tougher season than maybe some have expected, but definitely had good pace, but just lacked that consistency sometimes to get those results and get those finishes. Maybe there's been a little mistake or an incident, or they've been involved in something and not quite been able to bank those results a few times this season. So it's great to see so far. Really solid race for Dennis, well within that top 10.
Jeremy Alcoba cost himself a couple of tenths at the start of the previous lap and has now dropped back from that, what's turned into a three-rider fight for the last step on the podium behind Ayagura and Sergio Garcia, our current race leaders, as we see that fight further down the order with Aleix Vieux leading the group now ahead of Deniz Onchu, who's relegated down to 8th, and then a real dogfight. Can Onchu, Carlos Tatay and Bruno Iarachu I've been talking up during this race, just outside the top 10 now, but in a six-rider fight that can quickly change. Meanwhile, Sergio Garcia trying to come around the outside of Ayagura, who still holds our race lead. Yeah,
definitely. I think these guys now definitely playing the sensible game with each other here and just kind of, you know, checking each other out a little bit. And it looks like Alcoba's really finding it pretty difficult to stay with those guys in second. So I think we can definitely count it as a duel for the win and maybe see if these three can get in the fight for that final podium spot. But Alcoba, so far, I think he's just dropping off a little bit too much lap by lap and doesn't seem to be able to really reel them back in.
1.2 seconds his gap now to these three riders up ahead of him, squabbling over third place, and that's the same gap as there is between Sergio Garcia in second and Manuel Pagliani, who sits in third. Pagliani still leading that three-way group, Yuki Cooney and Raul Fernandez staying right with him. But as you said, Fran, looks like a three-way fight for the final step on the podium now. Ayagura and Sergio Garcia still making lines on one another up front and probably playing the game of testing one another's weaknesses out, as we see side by side now for third position. Yuki Cooney diving down the inside of Manuel Pagliani to take third place away.
That was a lovely move from Cooney there, super tight to the apex, got it done, no contact, not too much risk, really nicely done there. And these guys have moved in a couple of tenths, like we saw a second ago on the graphics. They were a bit quicker than the two ahead last time around, but they're still sort of a second and a half back from the lead, so they've cut a couple of tenths off as an average, but still a little bit of work to do there. It'd be interesting to see if Cooney's gone past there. It was a fairly decisive manoeuvre. We'll have to see if he's got some pace to really eat into that now.
Cooney with a strong lap last time around, and that's part of the reason that that gap was eaten away. But it seems that whoever leads this group then drops off their pace slightly and becomes vulnerable to the two behind them.
If I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd say they were all trying to keep each other back there, but definitely not. I think especially with Cooney in that group, obviously he just wants to be as far up the podium and on the podium. So for him, it'll definitely be everything on the table now. Pagliani, Fernandez, who knows whether they're going to race each other more than the rest of the guys around them. But I think, you know, they're just kind of hovering at that second and a half point. It'd be interesting because obviously with still just over 7 laps to go, there is enough time to eat that down, definitely, if someone can find that late burst of pace.
Let's say we might expect a couple of block passes between Manuel Pagliani and Raul Fernandez in the latter stages of the race, as we see the Thai Apiwat Wantananon further down the order has gone off the bike, so drama for him, and that will be a race over from 11th position, so he was well and truly in that group and in the mix, so a frustration for him. And Carlos Tatay, that is, who's down as well, so 2 of the riders from within that 6-rider pack have ended up out in the gravel trap.
Definitely looks like it's probably a related incident given how close together they were on track, but at least neither of them looking too mad. Hopefully that means it was just a bit of a racing incident, but a bit disappointing for those guys. Obviously Wantananon, but also Tatay, after that great qualifying, just faded a bit backwards in the first half of this race, and then obviously a bit disappointing to come away with no points.
Well, Can Onchu and Deniz Onchu will be rubbing their hands together, thank you very much. That more or less seals a position, you would think, for them in the top 10. Although that said, still that group has got 5 participant members in it at the moment, all the way down to 12th position, separated by just over a second between 8th and 12th. So 5 riders still in that group, but we lost 2 of them.
And then we see one of the young Malaysians from that Petronas Sprinter Racing team, sadly suffering a DNF there, but some great progress made by those guys throughout the season. Obviously, you know, it's their first experience over in Europe, and it's great to see them able to really make that progress and just move up at the back of the grid, just slowly but surely really getting on the pace. So disappointing for them to not finish. So hopefully in the second race we'll get a bit more time for them on track.
Strong first sector from Aleix Vieux, who seems to be cutting into the advantage of Jeremy Alcoba somewhat now. 2 seconds behind him, but as you said previously, if you're on a hot turn of pace and someone drops off in the latter stages, there is still an opportunity to bridge the gap to a group up ahead of you. Half a second now separates Cooney from Fernandez, and this gap is ebbing and flowing, fluctuating, and there's no clear indication as yet as to who's going to take that third position, but Cooney certainly with a strong race here.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, at this corner especially, gaps can disappear in an absolute instant, because if you make a hash of that, you've also lost your momentum and you're essentially going from a standing start onto the start-finish straight. So definitely everything to play for, and to make sure that LHV really pushes to the maximum and keeps thinking about that. He might have a shot at Alcoba. Who knows if Alcoba can see that gap coming down as well. That'll put some pressure on him, maybe pressure him into a mistake. But definitely, even just visually in the back of shot there, it looks like that gap really is coming down more and more. So that could be an interesting fight between those two.
Pagliani having cut through on the inside of Yuki Kuni down the inside into turn 13. Restores his position at the front of our secondary group, the battle for third position, up ahead of Yuki Kuni and Raul Fernandez, who I sense might not be able to quite go with those two. He may be holding something back, but on the evidence of what we've seen so far, once he was passed from the front of that group, he hasn't been able to restore his position at the lead of it. Fernandez still right with them on times, though, so he'll be hoping for something extra later on, as Sergio Garcia just runs a little bit deeper than he probably planned there on turn 6.
Yeah, definitely. As you can see now, that gap has come down a little bit more, but it seems to concertina so much, and not just corner by corner, but lap by lap, and depending on who's leading that group and where they're stronger throughout the track. But I have to say, I am quite surprised. I have to say, I did think these guys would catch the lead duo a little bit quicker. But we'll have to see how it pans out. Pagliani now putting in a good show to try and make that happen. Now it's gone down another few tenths, and you can see visually on the screen as well, they are getting closer, and not just in the braking zones where it's a little bit deceptive. But we'll have to see. I think you might be right about Fernandez. Either that, or he's being super sensible and saving a bit of rubber for the end of the race.
Yeah, the gap down between second and third position to less than a second for the first time since the early stages. We could have a 5-rider pack race in the latter stages here if Ayagura continues to hold back Sergio Garcia, which is the case for the moment at least, as they come through to cross the timing beam once again and start another lap. Really, as you said, this group is turning into a 5-rider fight now.
Yeah, definitely. As you can see now, they're also pretty much within the slipstream as well, so that's going to help Pagliani even more to just tag onto the back of this duo. And I think we could get some fireworks in a few laps now if there's 5 of those guys into that final corner. It is one of the most famous places in motorcycle racing for last lap shenanigans, so it could get pretty interesting.
For the record, LHV has now passed Jeremy Alcoba for 6th position, did so over the start-finish straight, so still not much in it between those two, but it has been Vieux who has had the pace as Sergio Garcia thinks about making a manoeuvre, and Manuel Pagliani is going to go 3 abreast down the inside line. Pagliani takes 2nd position, but he's run too deep. Garcia will have the cutback. Still 3 riders in the mix for the lead at the moment. Garcia with a perfect turn there on the exit comes through for the race lead. 2 overtaking manoeuvres in one from Pagliani, and Garcia passes the pair of them to hit the front once again.
That was some pretty spectacular racing there. I think for Pagliani, we are at the right track to make the reference. His ambition slightly outweighed his talent on that move there. But, you know, fair play for trying. Kept it nice and safe as well. Not too much risk. Just had a pop at it, but a little bit wide. But that definitely now will pull the pin for those guys. They know they mean business, and they're right there with them.
Not only showing them that he's there, he's also made that gap even smaller, because by holding up Garcia and Ayagura up ahead of him, we've got 5 riders in the mix, all covered by less than half a second now. Sergio Garcia at the front of the group. Ayagura cutting through down the inside line now to take up the race lead. Pagliani not close enough to challenge for the moment at least. They're all trying to set themselves up for the start-finish straight to get as much acceleration, as much slipstream as possible. Yuki Kuni looks vulnerable here to Raul Fernandez as they head down into the first turn once again. Pagliani breaks out of the slipstream down the inside to go side by side with Garcia, stands him up and comes through for 2nd position. Garcia relegated to 3rd, and as I said, Kuni was a bit vulnerable to Fernandez there, who comes through for 4th position.
Yeah, Fernandez, classic slipstream move there, just getting it done perfectly, and those guys at the front dicing it out a little bit. It was mighty close between Agura and Pagliani through that final corner there. I really saw them having to seriously pay attention to where the other's rear and front wheel was. But Pagliani looking racy, but pretty much how Agura was in those early stages, you know. It might just be putting on that pressure, or maybe as soon as he gets the opportunity, he will strike for the lead.
Manuel Pagliani throwing caution to the wind here. Remember, he's one of the championship contenders. Raul Fernandez up there trying to get into the mix, as well as cutting across the track altogether. Ayagura says, I'm going to block the 4 of you out. Claims the lead once again down into one of the main braking zones into turn 6. It's Ayagura who leads then. Manuel Pagliani in 2nd. The top 2 in the championship in 3rd and 2nd positions respectively now, because Fernandez has moved back past and up ahead of Sergio Garcia. So a rider who's held the lead for much of this race, Sergio Garcia, for the moment at least, is relegated down to 4th position.
Yeah, I think Garcia will maybe be wondering a little bit what's happened in the last couple of laps. Seems to have been a bit swarmed, but obviously they're still all in that group. It's everything still to fight for. No one's really been left out at all. No one seems to have a significantly slower pace than those around them, although Garcia seems to maybe be struggling a little bit to really keep the pace of the front three, but who knows how that's going to change if they continue fighting each other like they have been.
As we see Maximilian Koffler, and looks like we're going to get a replay, and straight up the back of the rider directly ahead of him, and down he goes. So it's going to be a pointless, or scoreless, I should say, afternoon day for him. He still has the second race to come, of course, an opportunity to pick up points later on. And Riccardo Rossi, who's already had a couple of dramas with a penalty on the grid, started from 21st on the grid in the end, and he is also sat in the gravel trap, as up front Manuel Pagliani finally gets ahead of Ayagura for the race lead. Raul Fernandez right with them in third, and at what point does Fernandez say, right, I need to stop being quite so defensive and quite so picky with my moves and start making lunges? His championship rival is up front, and he says straight away is his answer to me as he passes Ayagura down the inside line for second place, and now he can go after his main championship rival, Manuel Pagliani, who sits second in the standings. 28 points the difference between these two. Raul Fernandez attempting to defend that advantage or possibly even extend it as he makes the lunge down the inside into turn number 6, stands Pagliani up. Agura says, I'm going to take that as an opportunity to get in amongst it as well. Tries to cut back, can't quite get there. Pagliani does hold on for second position, but Raul Fernandez, who just a few laps ago we were questioning his pace, has managed to find his way through to the front.
Yeah, I think he's been sat there just, you know, okay guys, you know what, you can fight it out, not a problem, go for it. And now obviously made his move, and quite harsh maybe, not too over the limit, but definitely decisive. I want the lead of this race now, I'm going to take it, and has done just that. So yeah, this could get interesting now. Obviously, like, Pagliani has to make up ground on Fernandez, so we'll have to see if Fernandez can make that gap and get some clear air and kind of approach the last lap a little bit safer without having to defend everywhere. You'd probably be happier with that, but it doesn't look like he'll be able to break away.
Certainly the rider he's going to be more keen on making block passes on is going to be Pagliani rather than the rest of them, so when he stands him up, I suppose that's no great surprise. He wants Ayagura to get in there, and between the two of them as well, because Agura's down the standings in 7th position. Agura now cuts to the inside. Pagliani passes Fernandez as well. Agura is your new race leader. Pagliani second. Fernandez from first to third in one manoeuvre. Yuki Kuni up ahead of Sergio Garcia, so no change there as we see side by side once again, and Kuni almost under real threat from Sergio Garcia, who for the moment is 5th, but 3rd to 4th. This group starting to splinter into 2, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit there, and yeah, Kuni and Garcia again there, pretty close there, pretty close. I'm quite impressed so far that we've not had a little bit of cheeky contact here and there, but yeah, as you can see now, Pagliani again desperate to get back that lead, and ooh, again getting racy at the front there. They need to be a little bit careful, especially Pagliani. He really cannot afford a DNF today. Into
the braking zone 3 abreast once again. Garcia down the inside of Yuki Kuni, was fortunate not to collect the back of Raul Fernandez actually, as he came through down the inside, cuts across and now swarms his way into 4th position. Fernandez dropping ever so slightly back from the top 2, but as we've said previously, Fran, the slipstream advantage means you can close up those marginal gaps while it's less than half a second back into the next main slipstreaming opportunity. Just close back in on the riders directly ahead of you. There is nothing to choose between these 5 here. 2/10 of a second last time through at the end of the last sector, so nothing to choose between any of these 5.
Yeah, it's a real Moto3 classic now here in Jerez. They're all really getting in that fight and closed up completely, nothing between them. You can see there at the back, just Kuni a little bit wide onto that green stuff. Have to watch that, because he will end up with a penalty if he does that too many times, and Race Direction think that he's gaining an obvious advantage from doing that almost on purpose, or at least not paying enough attention to track limits. There we see again onto the green stuff. Just need to keep it a little bit cleaner, and yeah, hopefully he'll not get some penalty from Race Direction for that.
Into the final lap now, Manuel Pagliani it is who leads ahead of Ayagura in second. Raul Fernandez, the championship leader, in 3rd, looking for an inside move now. Sergio Garcia comes through for 3rd position, so a successful pass, but now Fernandez will go for the cutback and try and recover that 3rd place. Good battle here for third position. Up front, Manuel Pagliani and Ayagura trying to make ever so slightly a break to give themselves the best possible chance ahead of Sergio Garcia, Raul Fernandez and Yuki Kuni, who's still with them. They're going to come on to one of the main slipstreaming opportunities down into turn number 6, and that could give us an indication of who is going to lead us into the final sector of the lap as Pagliani goes off the circuit altogether, and a big cloud of dust comes up as Pagliani recovers to the track. It's cost him a lot of momentum. Garcia comes through, and now through on the inside, Ayagura up on one wheel. The number 11 Sergio Garcia, who's relegated down to third position, and it's Ogura who comes through to lead us.
Pretty incredible stuff there, that puff of dirt from Pagliani. Very, very dramatic. And it was almost Fernandez's nightmare there and Pagliani's dream, but now it's all switched again, and we've got a serious fight for this win. I think the final corner is going to be pretty spicy.
Sergio Garcia having made his move up on the inside of Manuel Pagliani, who's relegated down to third position, having made a place and dropped Raul Fernandez to fifth position. Yuki Kuni is challenging now for a place on the podium. 5 riders very much in the mix for the top 3, and who's going to make that last bend lunge? It's the number 32 Ayagura who still leads it. Garcia thinks about a move round the outside. He's left the door open. Oh, Garcia goes down, and he's collected Ayagura, and Manuel Pagliani is off and into the gravel trap. He's going to rejoin the track, but he's going to miss out on a place on the podium. He's dropped 2 positions already. It's Kuni who takes the checkered flag. Yuki Kuni, who we highlighted in the early stage of this race as one of the 4 men. And where will Manuel Pagliani eventually come over the line? P7, I think it is, for Manuel Pagliani. We wait for official confirmation of that, but that's what the timing screen is showing for the moment. Although I must say that it was all chaos on the final turn there. Sergio Garcia was presented with an opportunity. Kuni ran across the turn to try and block, but in so doing he left the door open. Garcia said, "Thank you very much, I'll make the inside manoeuvre," and it's a simple low slide at high speed into the side of his rival. And well, we had all sorts of drama there with riders crashing down on the final turn, and we did say in the build-up to this weekend that we could expect some last bend lunges. We didn't expect them to end in tears after such a clean and entertaining race between that group. And Aleix Vieux, who made a late race comeback to pass Jeremy Alcoba, has ended up being rewarded for that overtaking manoeuvre with a third position finish. His rivals up ahead of them, 3 of them taking one another out on the final turn. Pagliani in particular, very, very unfortunate, because he was right there as they fell in his path, and he had to take evasive action, but that cost him a significant amount of time. That final sector, 23 seconds for Manuel Pagliani compared to a 14 flat for Yuki Kuni and Raul Fernandez, and that was all time lost running off the track and rejoining. Raul Fernandez will be delighted about the upshot of that. Even though he's taken second position, he further extends his leading margin, and plenty to celebrate then here in Jerez in the opening race of the day for Raul Fernandez. Winner last time out in Aragon, and had already taken 2 second-place finishes this season. That's going to be yet another. Aleix Vieux on the number 81 bike, celebrating his best result since Le Mans. He was the winner in Le Mans, runner-up in Valencia. He's back on the podium here in Jerez, and that will be a confidence booster for race action later on in the day as well. But it's Yuki Kuni, 6th in the standings coming into this race, who picks up his first double-figure score since Le Mans. We said he was one of the early season form men, having struggled with some injury niggles midway through the campaign. He now appears to be very much back on form, but Raul Fernandez picking up the 20 points. Manuel Pagliani, although the timing screen initially showed at 7th position, he takes 5th. Here we're going to see it again, cutting across the front of him, Ogura. Garcia goes down, collects Ogura. Pagliani takes the merest of touches, but he had to go around the outside of them anyway, and off onto the gravel trap. The team furious about that, but there was absolutely nothing that Manuel Pagliani could have done to avoid that, and he's fortunate because he returns to the track just ahead of that group of Canon Chu, Denison Chu, in 6th position in the end, but of course they were fighting further down the order for much of that race on the fringes of the top 10, so some bonus points late on in what was an extremely exciting race and an extremely exciting final lap. Raul Fernandez knows that a second-place finish, well, that could have been one of the best possible results for him, with Pagliani ending up down in the back of that 5th-place group in the end, because it was 5 riders, and I think Raul Fernandez would take that second to his main rival's 5th. Yuki Kuni, of course, gaining in the context of the championship overall, moves on to 85 points, but it's Manuel Pagliani who was on in second position, who will probably be most frustrated by what happened on the final turn, because that really does affect him in the context of the championship overall. Reaction from the personnel supporting the number 23, the Ángel Nieto team. Did say earlier on that a name synonymous with Jerez, and Raúl Fernández will be very pleased indeed to have gained another 9 points in the championship standings. It's a 37-point gap now for Raúl Fernández as he moves on to 144 championship points. Pagliani breaks the century mark, scores 11, but there was an opportunity for a podium here today. See the results in the end confirmed with Manuel Pagliani in 5th position. Yuki Kuni takes it by 1/10 of a second over Raúl Fernández, but there were 5 riders in that group until the final turn. 3 of them wiping one another out. Aleix Viu comes through for 3rd position. Jeremy Alcoba taking 4th. His pace dropped off midway through the race, but that's a good damage limitation ride for him. Manuel Pagliani, the other of the main championship contenders, relegated behind 3 Spaniards, takes 5th position. See the last of the point scorers. Great effort from Tom Booth-Amos to get inside the top 15, directly ahead of Kevin Zanoni, but at the back of that group involving Somkhiat Chantra, who eventually recovers to 12th place. So a good result for Somkhiat Chantra, and Marc Garcia, who was well down the order on the grid, down on the 7th row, coming through for points as well in P13. So not exactly the best result for Marc Garcia, but he demonstrates that he can come through the field. And it looks as though we're about to hear from our race winner, Yuki Kuni.
It was a tough race. When beginning of the race, I little bit gap the front group, and I try pushing. I catch the top group, and the end the last lap, the last corner, when I waiting the little bit wide, and front of rider is crash, is lucky, and I can win. So this is very good. I'm so very happy. So this is thank you to Jim and also Sakai-san. Thank you. 最初スタートからしてちょっと離されたんですけど、またどんどん追いつくことができて、で最終的にラストラップで、自分ブレーキングで行こうと思ったんですけど、結構前がすごいギリギリだったんで、それで前のライダーが転倒してラッキーで1位ということだったんですけど、これはもうその1位できたのはとても嬉しいです。チームのサポートにみんな方々にサポートしてもらってここまで来れたのでありがとうございました。
So Yuki Kuni becomes the 5th different race winner of the season in the Moto3 Junior World Championship, and we'll leave you with some of the best moments of an exciting and in the end chaotic Moto3 race. The first action of the day here in Jerez. Well, let's hope that that first race of the day here in Jerez sets the tone for the remainder of the action here, because that was quite sensational. And now the well-deserved podium, 3 riders who have made it up, and an opportunity for us to take stock of where that leaves us in the context of the championship overall. Raul Fernandez will certainly be the happiest of the 3 who has made it onto the podium, as he extends his lead up now to 37 points. 144 he leads with, 7 for Manuel Pagliani. Jeremy Alcoba making up a couple of points on Pagliani as a result of that last bend drama. So a good damage limitation ride for Alcoba. Moves on to 96 points. But we said at the start of today's action that there were kind of 7 riders in realistic contention if things could go their way. Raul Fernandez was the only rider who'd broken the century mark, so he had a clear advantage. Now I would suggest that we've probably lost one of those. Mayagura, who sat 7th in the standings on 54, was already 70 points behind and is now 90 points behind after his last bend fall. So a real swing for him, because he was set to make up ground in the context of the championship overall, and instead with that last turn incident he ends up losing ground. So a look at the top 6 then after that result, and it's Raul Fernandez who leads ahead of Pagliani, Jeremy Alcoba 3rd, and moving up through the standings is Yuki Kuni. He takes 2 positions, moves ahead of Aleix Vieux and ahead of Sergio Garcia. So a successful morning so far for Yuki Kuni. Victory in race number 1 here in Jerez of the Moto3 Junior World Championship. More action to come from these guys later on today as we hear the winners' national anthem.
Fuerte el aplauso para los integrantes del podium, para el vencedor, por supuesto, Yuki Kuni.
Celebrations then for Yuki Kuni, taking his first victory in the FIM CEV Repsol. In his 2nd campaign of trying, he'd been close to the podium on a couple of occasions earlier on this season, in race 2 in Valencia and at the opening round in Estoril, but finally moves up onto the top step and scores the 25 championship points available for race number 1 here in Jerez. So great effort from Yuki Kuni to win ahead of Raul Fernandez and Aleix Vieux, who takes 3rd position in the end, somewhat fortuitously, it must be said. His confirmation of the updated championship standings then. Raul Fernandez out in front, 37 points the gap, as I said, ahead of Manuel Pagliani. Jeremy Alcoba in 3rd position, gaining a couple of points on Pagliani, but not quite the day that he might have been expecting so far. Yuki Kuni, with his 25 points, moves on to 85 and leapfrogs both Aleix Vieux and Sergio Garcia, but Vieux picks up his best score of the campaign since his victory in Le Mans, and that moves him above Sergio Garcia. So Garcia losing 2 spots and gaining 2 spots is Yuki Kuni, the main movers towards the top of the championship standings, as we see the full runners and riders and scorers in 2018. Of course, we saw that 4 for 1 Tannanon. That's not helped his cause, as he fails to score here today. And up and running towards the back of the field, as we said, a couple of British riders further down the order in the classification for 2018. But a great effort from Raul Fernandez, 2nd position, and in the context of the championship overall, that's a result he would have taken at the start of the day. There is Tom Booth Amos, who I was talking about, who has added to his championship tally, gets up and running with 2 points in the series standings. So race number 1 here of the 2018 FIM CEV Repsol in Jerez, and we've got 4 races still to come through the day here at the Ángel Nieto circuit, and hopefully they provide the same entertainment as that opening race here in Jerez. So we see images of our pit lane and now start to think about the remaining race action here in Jerez. Of course, we've got 2 other categories on track before the Moto3 Junior World Championship returns later on. And, well, that saw the championship take another twist there. And now we see whether any of our other categories here will take a twist as well. European Talent Cup is next up. We see the comeback from injury of Matteo Patacca. And then it will be Jessica Raffin attempting to defend his lead in the Moto2 European Championship. So the first of our championship leaders doing his work well and truly here today with a second-place finish. Didn't take the victory. That went to Yuki Kuni, who will be delighted about that. But in the context of the series overall, it'll be Raul Fernandez who will probably be the most satisfied with the result of race number 1 in the Moto3 Junior World Championship. Less than a minute till we start the build-up for the next of our races with the European Talent Cup. So a last opportunity to sum up that race, and we couldn't have asked for much more entertainment there on the final turn.
Definitely not. I think Kuni there getting pretty much exactly what teammate Agura got last season there. Just a look, all went his way, and he was in the right place, right time, and just managed to stay out of trouble there, which is a lot of the game quite often. So really big congrats to him on his first win. But Fernandez, you can see how happy he was even just crossing the line. Obviously, he knows what that means to have extended that lead even further.